So hi, everyone. We are back. Welcome to Navigating the Unknown. I'm Andrea Stern of SternRep and Ask SternRep. This webinar is based on us digging into the questions that we come up and keep coming up because as our times move forward, we have to keep moving forward. So we're diving in, and I want to thank the APA LA for bringing me on to do these with you. What a great resource APA is for every photographer. So join. Really good to join. This week we have our co-host, LA photographer and APA LA board member Hugh Kretschmer. Hi, Hugh.
Hi, how are you?
And photographer, author, teacher Chris Burkard joining us. Whoa. Hi, Chris.
Grateful to be here. That's a long-winded intro, but I'm honored to be here and grateful to share a little bit of knowledge today. Yeah.
Good. Let me turn to Hugh first.
Hi, Andrea. It's great partnering with you as always. These webinars have been profound, and the ability to be a partner with you on this has been great. I know that we're providing a lot of great information for everyone, especially during these times. And I've been a board member for about 2.5 years now. I'm grateful to be on. Grateful to meet Chris, our esteemed guest. Thank you for joining us, and I'll turn it back to you, Andrea.
Absolutely.
All right. So get ready, everyone. Buckle your seatbelts. Welcome to our fabulous guest, Chris Burkard. We are so damn excited to have you here today. Not just me, but everybody.
Yeah.
So Chris Burkard, let me tell everyone who might not know who you are, which is probably no one, but you are an accomplished explorer, photographer, creative director, speaker, and author. Chris works to capture stories that inspire humans to consider their relationships with nature while promoting the preservation of wild places everywhere. His holistic and visionary perspective has earned him opportunities to work on global prominent campaigns with Fortune 500 clients, appear as a TED speaker, develop specialty product lines, teach national and international photography workshops, like this new one you have going on, and publish a collection of books, including a children's book. Along with his team, Chris is based out of his full-scale production studio and art gallery near his hometown in Central Coast, California. Pismo?
Yeah, absolutely. That's me. Yeah, it's a great
At the age of 32, are you?
I'm 33.
33. Chris has established himself as a global presence and influencer, accomplishing a prolific portfolio, connecting people from all around the world and producing some of the most recognized creative work of our time. And may I mention, he has the astounding 3.6 million followers on Instagram.
Let that sink in.
It's long-winded.
But there's a lot to say. That's why we're gonna have a lot to ask you here. So you are somebody I could have researched for months and months and months. You have so much out there right now. You're an ideal example of the best way a photographer can handle their marketing to reach their fullest self, who they are.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We have one comment from Ren. I'm going to throw this in because I want attendees to be a part of this as much as possible. Ren says, no questions, just very excited to listen to this legend.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to share. I'm excited the reality is a lot of the knowledge that I've been able to gain, I think has been gained through hard-earned experience, a lot of mistakes along the way. I basically picked up a camera at 19 and I quit my job and I quit college and I pursued it with everything that I had. So needless to say, I've made a lot of mistakes and I've learned from those. And I think one of the key things that has offered me success is being willing to share those things in a very intimate and real way, an honest way. And I've always aimed to try to bring my audience into that fold, into my life, and really just be as transparent as possible about the needs and desires of what I think the modern day industry expects of you.
I think that's what draws everyone to you. I mean, your images are outstanding, but also to have that. And we want to look at Hugh's going to bring up your website and let's just check it out for a second. But everyone, after this, you can go by yourself, of course.
Yeah, there's some
stuff.
Yeah.
And
So we're
so
looking through.
today, I just want to say, I'm sorry, what? Did I cut you off?
No, I think we're just talking
Uh,
about the portfolio here. This is commercial work right now.
One thing I just want to say is everybody stay tuned for wrap up at 1 o'clock. Chris is going to have to go. But I want to really cover portfolio, marketing, and success. And can you tell us a little about your website, Chris? How did you?
Right now, we're probably looking at my least favorite page, which is all the commercial work that I've done. This is probably the stuff I would never share online.
What's your favorite page?
I mean, it's the work that I'm inspired by. It's the adventures, it's whatnot. I mean, the reality is, this is a great example, is like, you're only going to bring back the work that you put out into the world, right? And what I mean by that is, people are often trying to figure out, well, I want to, I shoot weddings, but I really want to shoot motocross or whatever it is, right? That's a very stark comparison, and that's for a reason, because I get this question a lot. People have to do what they have to do to make money, but the reality is there is something else that they're inspired by. And so what I often say is, like, if you're not putting out the work that you want to bring back, nobody will ever hire you for something like that. So the work that I put out there is the work that I'm inspired by. It's the work that, it's the expeditions, it's the exciting stuff, it's the things that really get me going. And oftentimes what happens is, people are like, oh, well, you can plan and execute this big scale expedition and this and that. Can you also shoot product photography? And I'm like, yeah, I can. And here's my portfolio. And now on my website, you can dig deep and you can find some work that's just like, way back there for, Apple or LG or whoever that is. But really what I try to advocate for is work that is, unscripted, raw, shot in nature, on expedition, because that's the work I want to do more of. Again, so I've invested heavily into creating these portfolios, time, money, energy. And I think that's one key thing, is like, you need to be willing to invest in your career. I mean, think of yourself as like a business, think of yourself as a business that has a marketing budget. And if your marketing budget is something that you're allotting time and energy and money to create portfolios you can then put in front of clients, then when that opportunity comes knocking, you're going to have something to show them. My automotive portfolio, it didn't just come out of thin air. It came from me spending time shooting cars on my own. And then I was able to be hired for those jobs, right? So again, I think that this is like, when you think about what you're putting out there, you just want to be considerate of kind of what you're trying to instill in the people that might see your work, what energy, what emotion, what you're trying to really message you're trying to send.
Yeah. I always say that that's what a portfolio is, the jobs you want to get, not just what you've shot in the past.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
So it sounds to me like you're shooting from your heart. This is your heart desire. This is what drives you. This is what.
Yeah, I mean, heart is a good way of putting it, for sure. I would say that there's, to be more clear, it's more about having a mission statement. I often have young photographers come to me and one of the first things I ask them is, they say they want to shoot for this title or this title. They want to shoot for Nat Geo. They want to shoot for whoever. And the first thing I say is like, well, what's their mission statement? And nobody knows. And the reality is, if you don't know their mission statement, then you've missed the opportunity to understand what they stand for, what their ethos is, the whole point of it. So if somebody wants to work with me, or like, what is my purpose? What is my mission statement? And yeah, you could say like, what's at the heart of everything you do. But, when you think about Nat Geo, to inspire people to care about the planet, that's their mission statement. We as photographers need to be researchers. I pride myself on being a good researcher, somebody who knows my client, who understands what they're looking for, what they're hoping for, and what they stand for, right? And what's at the heart of everything they do. Well, at the heart of all Nat Geo's film, digital, social properties is that ethos. So you need to understand and be a student of these brands or these people you hope to work with, if you ever want to be able to find some success in there. And I think that's really what it boils down to, right? Like I'm shooting from my heart, but the reality is like, there's a deep passion for wanting to share, these places with the world, because I feel like it's one of the only ways you can ever inspire somebody to vote for the environment or to care about the environment. That's really
Yeah.
what it comes down to.
That's great.
Hugh, will you go to his Instagram?
I most certainly will. In a second.
Yeah, so much of this we'd never see without you
So,
going there.
while I'm doing this, Chris, I have to ask you, what started first? Was it the adventure or was it the photography?
Well, that's a great question. I started my career uh, in a basically, I never traveled anywhere as a kid. I grew up in a single parent home, no passport, nothing like that, and I really didn't ever travel anywhere um, in the world. It was just a matter of like basically I was subjected to, I think, the national parks and the places close to my home, which was awesome, and I'm super passionate about that. But the reality is, those adventures I had early on were just adventures going up the coast to Big Sur and exploring my home state, right? Because I wasn't afforded the opportunity to experience a lot of other places. And so I would say that when I picked up a camera, I'm not going to lie, like in the beginning, it was purely for selfish reasons. All this stuff about heart and mission statement, all that came later. And that's fine, because when you pick up a camera at first and you're thinking of it as a career, you're like, it'd be great is to not drive around with metal showing on my tires and have money in my bank account and put food on the table, right? Like those essential needs. So when I picked up a camera, it was like, all I want to do is collect stamps on my passport and collect a paycheck, right? And that's really what happened. I thought that maybe this was going to be a tool to get me out of this small, tiny town and go see the world. And I knew that the only way that was ever going to happen was if I actually invested that time and money and energy into it. And like I gave everything, and that's exactly what I did. I gave everything I had to it.
Fantastic.
I want to get to some questions. So we did get a lot of questions, and attendees, please keep the questions coming in. We love it. One from Ryan. Chris is known for landscape, so how does he marry with that commercial work, the relationship between personal and paid work?
Well, what does that mean? Commercial, that's kind of an odd question, because commercial work is anything you're being paid for by a brand to do for them. So the work that I've done for Apple or Toyota or whatever, it's all been landscape inspired. Now, to me, the reality is when you think of commercial, you might be thinking of like, I'm going to shoot a product in a studio somewhere. Well, that's one type of commercial photography. There are millions of types, right? Anytime you're hired by a company to do a job for them where you're advertising a product or a message or whatever. I mean, a lot of times when I'm going to shoot commercially for somebody, it doesn't mean I'm at all shooting their product. I might just be shooting the ethos and the heart or the spirit of what they're hoping to portray. I've been lucky enough to work on a few campaigns for some large tech companies, and I've never had to shoot their tech. They needed somebody who was an aerial specialist who could document and do a massive aerial reconnaissance of a certain area for an upcoming, display or something like that. So ultimately, yes, I think the reality is what would best define that answer is I learned a long time ago something really important, and I hope everybody listens to this, is that you don't need to, nor are you expected to, nor should you ever try to be good at everything. There is not a single editor on the planet who's worth their salt, who's ever going to hire you and say, you know what, I need you to shoot landscapes and portraits and underwater and this, like, because when you do that, they know that all that stuff's going to be watered down. And so by honing your skills on one thing in particular, you're the best at it. You're Paul Nicklin. You're the best at shooting under Antarctic ice. Can you shoot beautiful Afghan portraiture? Yes. But are you hired to do that? Probably not, because there are people who are better. So if you want to be hired by the best, to be the best, you need to be really, really focused at something. That does not mean you cannot build your repertoire and expand into other facets, but that's something you'd work on your own time. So my career started in landscape photography. That was my passion, and I evolved that into shooting surfing. Surfing for the magazines taught me how to plan expeditions, and really that helped me focus on this understanding of being on assignment and going out and creating the work I needed to create for the magazine to fill this. And ultimately, I started getting hired by commercial clients because they knew I had an understanding of authentic surf culture. And so I would implement that into my shoots, or I'd be licensing images. You know, you license a photo of a girl longboarding to Verizon Wireless, that has nothing to do with the technology, right? Because here's the thing. Most brands, more important and higher paid than the photos of their products, are the photos of what is the lifestyle that we're hoping to sell to our audience. So that's what I've honed my focus on.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Actually.
Really, really good.
It reminds me, you talk about your new, let's mention it, the business of photography is your new workshop.
Yeah.
I can't wait to watch it. Like, everything sounds extremely important. And to get the inside view from this guy, check it out. One of their section is the benefits of creating personal projects.
Yes. Yeah. I'd love to talk about that.
Please talk about this, please.
So this is kind of, I'm going to try to get this down, but the reality is, like, I'm passionate about sharing information. I'm passionate about helping young creatives find their way. And one of the things I would say is that in my career, it took me a long time. And here's the thing, is if anybody's looking for that overnight success, whatever, I have nothing to tell you. I mean, I'm an overnight success. It just took 15 years of nights to get there. The reality is there's no key moment, there's no tool, but if there's one thing I've noticed, it's that there has been an absolutely sort of paralleled success with the amount of personal projects I invest in and the amount of commercial success. And why is that? Well, quickly, I'll just give you this little history.
Yeah.
I made a film with a company called Smug Mug. They're a print company. It was about my exploration in the Arctic surfing. That film came out. It paid me no money. It was a total investment of time. I almost didn't do it because it seemed like a waste and I needed to make income. I did that. That thing had got millions and millions of views. And because of that, I got my TED Talk. And because of the TED Talk, I got more work. And because of that, I was able to make a film called Under an Arctic Sky, and that gave me more work. And what I'm saying is that these are not tight oscillations. These are spread apart. And what I mean by that is every 2 years, I try to invest my time in the interim into something that I can push out. Why? Now, to me, the personal project, let me just explain. This whole thing started with my first investment of time and energy. It was a 50-day road trip across the California coast. It's a book called The California Surf Project. It's still being published by Chronicle. It's still out there in the world. It's been a really successful project. That book got my work in front of a whole new audience of people. Every project I've done, the TED Talk, my film being on Netflix, it's gotten me into a whole new audience. And by reaching out to new audiences, you're able to reap more work. And so even my children's book, that was one of those projects. My children's book spoke to an audience that might have never seen my work. So one of the key things about marketing, the most important thing I could ever say is, like, if you're speaking to the same people over and over, you're basically not going to find any success. The point here is you want to speak to different groups of people. So if my children's book spoke to parents and fathers and mothers and kids, that's a group of people that might be interested in my work. And now that that's in national park gift shops, like, people are going to be introduced to my work that way. If my film is on Netflix, if my book, The California Surf Project, because of how I shot it and because of my mentality at 20 years old going in and saying, hey, I love surfing, but I'm not going to shoot this book like a surf magazine. I'm going to shoot this book like a timeless, aesthetically focused piece that's full of silhouettes, so that any person who's ever spent time on the coast can relate to this, and the images last forever. That book was allowed to be in Urban Outfitters and Barnes and Noble, all over the place. So point being, the personal project needs to be a part of your repertoire, because what ends up happening is this: you do something great, or you share something great, or you produce something great, and then you try to ride that success as long as you can. That's bullshit. Don't do that. Like, the reality is you need to have the forethought when things are successful to stop and say, things are great. I could ride this gravy train, but I'm going to take some time for myself and put time into this project. And they are time. I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars over the past 15 years, maybe $1 million of my own money that I've poured into these projects. So there is an actual investment. And yeah, that investment has accrued naturally over success. But point being is that you need to take the time and have the forethought when things are successful to stop and say, hey, I want to invest in this so that when times like now are happening, it can carry you through.
God, that is so important, because even as you say, when you're starting to have that mentality, I've seen it where people do really well later in their career, and if they don't keep up on that,
Yeah,
their history.
Yeah.
totally. It's scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
It
But those projects that you choose are, are they solely for yourself? Are you projecting where those projects could go?
I'm oftentimes trying to think like where does this have the potential to go? And again, if I just I love working in the surf world. That's where I grew up. I love working for magazines. I still do surf articles for magazines. Even today, I had one out this month. But I know that's going to the same audience I've always spoken to. And I love serving that audience, and that's like my core audience. But I'm not trying to think about new projects in the sense that can that serve them? I want to reach out to somebody who would never see my work, some kids in rural Africa or China or something like that. And so to me, that's the beauty is that if I can spread this work around, and you look at Ansel Adams' body of work, it touched every nation, it touched every type of person. And I think that the reality is you want to leave work that's going to be around a lot longer than you are. And that's my goal, is like everything I do, I really hope it's timeless.
And that was your mission statement.
Yeah.
It seems back to your mission statement.
Exactly.
Okay.
We have a question from Teresa. Hugh, do you want to?
Sure. Teresa asks, what editorial criteria do you use for the images you put out into the world so that they reflect your professional style?
That's great. That's a good question. I think the first and foremost thing to answer that question, the best way to do it is you have to trust who you're working with, right? You have to trust that you're going to have the flexibility. And this is why, Teresa, this is such a good question, because the whole point of being a specialist, this is why you do that. Because here's the thing. If you're really good at what you do, people are going to trust your opinion. Editors are going to trust your opinion. Creatives are going to trust your opinion because you're the darn best at it. But the reality is, if you're hired simply because you have a camera and you know how to use it, that's a terrible reason to be hired. That's like the lowest of the low. It just, you feel like you're giving up a piece of yourself because basically someone's saying, oh, well, you were the easiest person to find to do it. And so ultimately you really want to hone in on what makes you a specialist. So when you're hired, they take your opinion seriously. And then I think the other thing is, I often tell people, write a list of clients and magazines and put yourself in the center, and then really draw lines to those clients and to those magazines that you want to shoot for, and think about the fact that, are they going to have to change their creative vision or their artistic style to meet you, or are you going to have to change yours? Why would you ever want to change your vision or your standards for somebody else? That would be such a bummer, because you'd be basically giving up a piece of who you are. So for me, I want to make sure that I align. And for example, if I like Surfer Magazine, but I really fit with the Surfer's Journal, I might go with the Journal, even though they pay less or something like that. Because, if it's Men's Journal or Outside Magazine, or I don't care if it's Dog and Paw or whatever, Field and Stream, it doesn't matter. The point being is that the more of a student you are, the better researcher you are, the better you will know what their creative ethos is, and the better you can align yourself. And I think this isn't directed towards Teresa, but photographers in general are a lazy bunch of people. We tend to everybody, I know that because everybody's like, what's that one quick fix you had? What's that one successful moment? And if you're looking for that, you're never going to find it, right? Being willing to do the research, to put in the effort, to find out who those people are. The fact that every magazine has on their website some sort of a data or information or analytics list that you can just look at and understand who are their demographic, who are they speaking to, who writes for them, and to research those things. That's something that we should all be doing, right?
Even if you're repped.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
What if a photographer has a hard time finding their mission statement? What if they feel a little lost? They don't know how to, what do you?
Absolutely great question. Keep in
Mhm.
mind, these things take years to understand. I can't tell anybody, I can't say you need to go to the woods and you need to like find yourself in solitude and then it'll come to you. I mean, the reality is I started my career with this selfish but totally justifiable purpose, like collect stamps in my passport. I'd never seen the world and collect a paycheck. There's nothing wrong with that. After time, to steal the words right from Yvon Chouinard, you spend enough time in these wild places, you feel a sense of responsibility to want to protect them. And I think with that protection for me also comes inspiration. Like I don't aim to be heavy handed telling people that the environment is important or whatever. I aim to share what I love and what I fear losing most in hopes that they will go experience it. And I also advocate for diversity outdoors and the hope that people understand that as a young Hispanic kid who didn't have the opportunity to go out there, it was really critical and important for me to let people know that like if I can make this career path happen, anybody can, coming from eager means. So if you pick up a camera on a Monday haphazardly and on a Friday randomly, you're never going to find that flow. You need to like invest that time and energy into finding your flow, whatever that looks like. And then really that's how you, and for me, that mission statement came about on that 50-day road trip in California. I actually wrote a really interesting article on Red Bulletin one time about the importance of the road trip, how it evolved my career, Jimmy Chin's, Keith Lazinski's, Renan Ozturk, even Ansel Adams. It's this idea of this immersive experience in a place like the outdoors that usually brings that about.
Wow. Oh my God, this is so good. I could say so much. I have to control myself.
We have part two.
Part two,
Yeah.
please.
Well, if you're
Don't.
interested.
Love that.
If you would, that
Really?
would.
Anytime. Yeah. I mean, I love this stuff. I mean,
Oh,
it's great.
good.
Awesome.
Well, I always think too, if a photographer feels a bit lost, and this can come and go in careers at any level, to have some fun.
Yeah.
Go have some fun.
Mhm.
Yeah, because that's, I mean, Chris, it sounds to me that that is what drives you is the joy, I mean, it's just,
Mhm.
and you approach your subjects from such a different angle. I find your work, and there's many different landscape photographers out there, but there's something fresh about you, the
Yeah.
way you
It's
approach it.
kind of funny. And I appreciate that you caught on that too, but it's funny because I think that like we're in this sort of trend phase where it's like small person, big landscape, right? I've thought about this a lot, and I've always had that in my work. And I think the reality is because growing up shooting surfing, working on staff for the magazine for 8 years, doing tons of feature articles, the style of surf photography that I was used to was tight action, lots of logos, this and that. And so if you think about this, my style that I tried to bring to the magazine, my sort of, what I was good at, like I was talking about earlier, was really this pulled back perspective showing this beautiful natural arena and the surfer there, or the empty wave and the landscape around it. So if anything, the style that I often like was thinking about in my head was like, no, I'm starting off with a subject. I'm going to show the landscape as opposed to like just randomly putting a subject into my landscape. It was all about actually widening up and showing what was around my subject, because I always had a subject. The subject was either the wave or the athlete or maybe wildlife, whatever. So I think that's kind of the perspective I've tried to take it from.
Okay. And so let me ask you this, do you plan these shoots? Like, let's say this photo of Mount Fuji with the surfer in the foreground, is this choreographed with the surfer when are you
No,
planning
it's
that shoot?
that's the thing that's beautiful about shooting a natural phenomenon like a wave.
Yeah.
You have wind, swell, tide, sun. Is it clear behind the volcano? I mean, that photograph, what makes it so special, why you see it and just can't turn away, is that it's a beautiful moment that unfolded naturally. And that's exactly what it is. Like,
Okay.
yeah, I planned for 6 months to go to the Aleutians. I did this, I did that. But the reality is I had no clue that it was going to be clear on that day. In fact, out of the 14 days we were there was probably 9 to 10 hours of clear skies. That happened to be one of them. So the point being is like when these moments happen, you have to be ready. You have to synthesize the experience in your head, because I notice a lot of photographers, it's like when you go to Iceland for your first time, you're literally driving 60 miles an hour, taking photos out the window because everything's new and everything's exciting. By day 10, you're like, oh, whatever, biggest waterfall in the world. I don't care. You don't even stop. And it's like a perfect day. So I've tried to kind of like desensitize myself to that excitement. So when I'm there, what I can do is focus creatively. Like, what is the shot I want to get?
Yep.
Do I want to be shore level, 10 feet above? That photograph, there's so much like science in it because I'm trying to have the spray of the wave hit the background. I'm having the volcano. I'm ruling it out to be a spread or a cover, which it was. But no, like I didn't plan for that wave to be there. We obviously, the day was super clear. It was crystal clear. I tried to find a location that would make sense, that would speak to the experience, because what I'm better at now than when I started is recognizing when something's truly significant and shooting the crap out of it, as opposed to just trying to shoot everything, hoping to find something significant.
Right.
God, that's the same theory about shooting everything versus specializing.
Yeah, kind of. And obviously like so much planning goes into these trips that I think like good planning, like, luck favors the prepared, right? Like there's never been a truer statement. And that's just all there is to it. If you go somewhere, if you go to the Sierra in hopes of finding a rainbow on a sunny day, it's not going to happen. You have to go there when it's cloudy. So you have to be prepared for those things.
Yes. As with photographers who shoot anything, the same thing. Plan it. Get your mood boards together. What do you want to shoot? Do your research. Who is shooting that kind of stuff? Why? But we have a couple questions. Sarob asks, how do I take initial steps of making photography into a business?
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. I think the first and foremost thing is like, look at what your skill set is. I've often said to people, I grew up by the beach, right? I grew up, the beach was like a babysitter. So I had an inherent understanding of the ocean, and it gave me a leg up. That's what I'm saying. If you played like Division I football, there's a good chance that you're going to be able to photograph football better than I would. If you play basketball, you're going to have a leg up shooting basketball. So point being is like, work with your strengths, work with if you show dogs as a family, you're probably going to have a better chance shooting, like competitions of dogs, something like that. It doesn't matter. That's the point. I think so. The key is work with your strengths first and foremost. Understand what the market looks like. Where is there a need? Where is there a hole to fill? And can you fill that hole, right? Is there a void being filled where somebody's not photographing this, or there's a style, or there's a story that's not being told, right? And I think the key component is like, look at goods and services in your community locally. Like, don't start internationally unless you want to just go huge right off the bat. What are some needs in your community? Keep in mind, when I picked up a camera at 19, I would have literally shot anything to make a living. It was not about Chris Burkard, the landscape photographer. I'm such a badass. No, I didn't care. I was like, I will shoot weddings. I will shoot senior pictures. I will shoot a portrait of your dog. I don't care at all. I was asked to shoot midget rodeos. Didn't do it, but I'm just saying literally anything was on the table, and I had to let go of my ego, because in the beginning, I just wanted to prove to my family that me quitting school was worthwhile and pursuing photography was going to be something that was going to be a career. And that was all I cared about. Like, I cared about making money as a photographer. So you need to, first of all, get rid of that ego, get rid of that concept that you're going to be, this awesome adventure landscape photographer right off the bat. I remember in the beginning of my career, I literally would run out on the pier. I would take borrowed film equipment. I would take expired rolls of film from CVS Pharmacy, and I would shoot surfers. And then I would run up to them on the beach after they were done surfing. And I'd say, I'm all winded. I'd be like, hey, I'll sell you some photos on a CD for like 20 bucks. And that was like how I'd make money each day. And basically I would go to surf shops. I would ask to shoot their store for credit or for money. I would, tap my friend pool to see who could, see who needed images. So I'm literally talking about like the bottom of the barrel, just scraping by. I mean, if you want to turn photography into a business, think of it like a business. What service can you render that's not being rendered?
I would also throw in, from a rep's perspective, really do your research, check out photographers, what interests you, then join APA. I'm not kidding. Great organizations like that. Watching this webinar. If you're watching this webinar, you're doing some investigation.
Absolutely.
Just so available to you right now.
Yeah. I mean, what you guys offer is incredible. And to be honest, this is the thing, is that it's a little frustrating because I think when I started, I remember reaching out to all of my heroes, all my photographer friends or people that I looked up to. They weren't friends of mine, for advice, for internships. And I just got nothing, like no response. Nobody wanted to help. What I'm getting at is that nowadays, the resources, the schooling for photographers, I mean, you can take masterclass, you can go and do this, you can do so much stuff. It's incredible. Like, truly learn is never been like this. And I just would say, like, I'm in education just because I quit school and I didn't go to college. My grammar might be terrible, but I never devalued education. I never stopped learning. I took every type of online course. I did multiple internships. All I'm saying is that exhausting your resources to what's out there.
And we have more resources.
Yeah, now than ever. Or I have people reach out to me in direct message all the time, and I try to help them as well in that regard.
Definitely. I do that with clients. It's shocking how people answer you and talk to you. Tom asks, how do you go from shooting smaller regional brands to national clients?
How do you go from shooting smaller regional brands to national clients? Excellent. I think that the broader your work gets out there, and I'm purposely not talking about social media because I want people to understand that there are other forms of marketing than social media. Yes, it's a valuable tool. I never had it for the first 10 years of my career, and I managed to do fine. Again, my book, The California Surf Project, that was a huge investment of time. I was still scraping by as a photographer, shooting for magazines and this and that, and ultimately getting editorial work, right? A lot of times you shoot for magazines not because they're going to pay you exorbitant amounts of money, but they're going to give you exposure that other international clients or advertisers might be able to see. Secondly, would be getting your work on blogs, getting your work on and spreading it across the internet, hopefully with a story attached, right? Seeing a random image floating around has never been that successful. But if you have a story about surfing in the Arctic, or a story about a cliff jumper in Cuba, or a story about some beautiful Native American woman weaving these rugs in a Hogan in Monument Valley, I don't know what the story is. The point is, if you have a story and you're thinking like that, you want to get exposure. So exposure is what gets your photos and your footage and whatnot in the eyes or in front of international clients. Social media can be a great tool. And the one thing I want to say about it is that do not discredit the fact that every major art buyer, every major corporation, everybody's using that. Nobody's like, oh, that's beneath us. We're not going to look at social media as a way of finding new artists. That's not true at all. Social media, Facebook, creating printed products. There's obviously the old, I'm sure you're very familiar with this, but creating promo package, which basically is, where you'd go through a rep or where you would buy into some sort of email list or address list, and you would send a small postcard with your images on there to thousands and thousands and thousands of desks in New York and editors and whatnot. That's a great tool, although I've seen those piles just stack up so high on the corner of people's desks. It looks like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. So I really would tell people, like, hey, for me, in the beginning of my career, I remember a friend came to me. They didn't know him at the time. And he's like, I want to make a little video on your work and what you love to do. And I was like, excellent. I had no idea this was going to be such a valuable tool, but I made like an identity reel that since then I've replaced with my TED Talk. But it was like a 3-minute piece that just said like, what's my ethos? What do I care about? What are my images all about? And the point being is like, you know, you guys understand this. When a brand is hiring you, they're hiring you, right? Like they're hiring you because they want to spend time around you. Like that's something they're going to be forced to do. If you seem like an uninteresting person or somebody who doesn't care about people or is not going to be easy to be around, probably a number one sign that they're going to have a challenging time. And I will tell you one thing, if it comes down to me and somebody else whose work is better than mine, because there's a lot of people out there who are more technically sound, I would just aim to outperform them in a way that feels more intimate and more caring and more carefree and fun. And that's really what you can bring to the table.
More real.
Yeah, exactly.
I always say our best sales is humanizing yourself.
Right.
You are your best sales. Be a human out there.
Well, it's also, yeah, your personality is come, and your relationships have really been now more of a major part of the marketing and
Absolutely.
ability to get jobs.
Now you mean just because of social media?
Yeah, well, I think there's so many photographers out there too. It's like, you know, everyone's capable, everyone's got a great portfolio. Who do I bode with best? And if I'm coming from a place of being of service and I'm approachable, better chance of that. So
it's a really good way of putting it. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Yeah.
We have a question about influencers, and two questions. How does Chris think the influencer, in quotes, approach to productions and shooting will continue to change the landscape of commission work?
Like commission work, how are they affecting
the influencer approach? Which
okay, but what does that mean? Because that's the complicated. To skin that cat. You know, I think that the reality is this is like, you have to define what an influencer is first and foremost, right? And what I would say, just my humble opinion, is an influencer is somebody who most the work they shoot, they have to promote. A photographer, in the traditional sense, is somebody where most the work they shoot, they don't have to promote, right? And so if everything you're shooting, involves you sharing it, that's an influencer model because you are acting as an influencer for that brand. If you are a photographer, and for me, it's about, I would say 70-30, 70% of the work I'm not even allowed to talk about. I can't even say who the client is because it's a red, you know how it is. Like it's a shoot for so-and-so or this company or whatever. I don't even own the work, right? I go, I shoot, I leave. And then there's 30% of the work where I go, I shoot it, and then there's a portion of that where they're like, hey, we also want you to promote this work and an extra fee on top of that. Personally, not being really involved in the influencer market on a heavy level, I just don't fully understand how it's going to change, how it's going to work. I think if I could just like maybe give a piece of wisdom out there, is that I think one tool every photographer, every influencer, any person that's creative in general can do to create a better value for their work, that would be to make sure, and I know you're going to love this because this is your job, is to break out the cost of doing the job versus the cost of what you're getting paid, right? Educating the client as to what they're actually getting for their money. If they want you to go and do this shoot and, oh my gosh, they have all these asks and yada, 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 you can put a number in front of them, one big round number, and they're like, oh, we don't have that budget. And you're like, no. Sorry, let me break this out for you. You're paying me this much. You're only paying me $400 a day. It's going to cost me $8,000 a day to do the job. That's the food, the models, the travel, the flights, the yada, yada. So I think this is the question that I see is like, basically, we've seen this time and time again, photographers undercutting photographers, influencing, undercutting photographers, vice versa, everything, basically the bar being lowered. So how do we raise the bar again? We raise the bar by being intelligent and by breaking out your expenses and by being willing to say no. And be willing to say no means that you're saying yes to something better, but it also means that you're not just taking someone's first offer, or you're taking this crappy pay structure because you feel like you're forced to. And I know we're in scary times, and it's easy to say that. And of course you can vary your rates depending upon, COVID or whatever, but ultimately you do need to be willing to educate. And oftentimes if you educate the client as to what they're getting, they will quickly understand that, oh, wow, well, you know what? They gave me that number of $10,000, but most of this is just going towards what we want to do. This is our production fee. This is the expenses of doing the work, right? Their pay is actually very low. So I think that's a very important thing to do. It's something to always remember. And to be honest, as the jobs get bigger, you obviously have a rep like yourself who would be negotiating that for them, the fee. You would have a producer who's negotiating that for them. But speaking to the photographers that don't have the ability to do that, or don't have the ability to have these levels of separation, I would say that's very important.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Again, I have too many questions, so I'm just gonna move on. Carol asked, how do you price individual Instagram postings for clients?
Great. This is totally dependent upon their reach, their audience. Are they a Fortune 500? Am I going to charge, some small startup in Salt Lake City the same amount that I'm going to charge, some massive, huge brand that's in New York? No, it's totally different. And I think the other thing is like, I'm never afraid to just ask around, ask people out there in the world, like, hey, what are you, what did you charge them? Yada, yada, yada. The complicated thing is like, if I'm asking some other, brand influencer, what have you, what they charged said post, it's all dependent on numbers, right? Like my 3 something million versus their 2.5 thousand, like it's a very different game. So there's not like some algorithm here. There's not something. And then beyond that, I could have millions of followers, but my interaction, my engagement might suck. So that also comes into the equation, right? It's important to realize and just recognize the fact that like there are a lot of, this varies a lot. And that's kind of the thing I'm saying is like, there's no real way to give you, just to spit you out a number, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think doing your research, asking around, working with an agent in that regard is really helpful. Understanding that, this is an advertisement that you're giving for them. And so not only are you posting something on your page, so to say, that might be like have the audience of a small magazine, whatever your page looks like, but you're also aligning yourself with them. So one consideration I would say is that there's something that I always like to consider, my agent likes to consider. It's called opportunity lost cost, right? What is the opportunity lost cost of me doing work with United? Well, that means that I couldn't do work for a couple months or a couple years or whatever with Virgin Atlantic or some other brand, right? So point being is like, if I'm promoting something for Toyota, I have to take into consideration, hey, I won't be able to do any work with any of these other car companies because they're going to want an exclusivity.
So you add that into the price.
Yes, always.
Yes.
Yeah. If it's
the value.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Part of the value. Yeah. Yeah. Because how terrible would it be if I was like one day promoting this and then one day promoting that and one day,
right.
To be honest, for me, I mean, I understand I'm in a different position than a lot of people, but one of my really important like key things that I tell people is like, if I can't make something with that brand, if I can't create something with them, then I don't want to do it. Like, there's no way I'm going to take some like video they made or photo they made. Like, I am a photographer, so I have to create something with them or for them, and then I will share that, because that shows my creative involvement, which is a part of, I think, the transparency of just not advertising or sponsoring something that I wasn't involved in.
Right, because you're a photographer. Where a lot of influencers aren't.
But here's the thing. We all talk about, like, we love to use this word influencers and then creatives and photographers like synonymously. But what's creative about you taking something that's baked that they've made and then you sharing it? Nothing, right? So a lot of the people who are doing something successful are, they're going out, they're creating their own rendition of that advertisement or that product or whatever, and they're putting it out there, and that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Should we go on to marketing? We have a marketing question.
Well, one more Instagram question. Do you have any things that, like, what makes a good Instagram? Any rules that you follow or
Yeah,
don't follow? Like,
I have about a 40-minute presentation that I've done all over the world that dives deeply into that. Sadly, there's no way to synthesize that down into a couple seconds. But what I will say is that what you say is just as important as what you share visually. I would also say that you don't need to describe people. I call this the golden rule, but the truth is there are no rules. So just take this for what it will, throw it over your shoulder, take it with a grain of salt. This is just the world according to Chris, but you don't need to describe people what they can already see.
Yeah.
What do I mean by that? If you have a photograph, you are doing somebody a disservice. You're pretty much calling them a moron if you try to tell them what they can already see. You don't need to know that it's a photo of the mountains and that it's cold when there's snow around and all. Like, you want to describe to people what the visceral experience was of being there. What did it feel like? What was the moment like to be there? And if you can describe that, and if you can accentuate that, people will really engage because they've felt it too. And that's what photographs are all about. It's about sharing feelings and emotions, not trying to synthesize down something that just doesn't make a lot of sense. So I would really urge people to just be aware of that, right? Understanding that, like, you are never going to find success on social media unless you embrace one simple theory. This is just a two-way texting platform. All it is a communication tool. So imagine your house opening the door and saying, "Hey, Andrea," yada, and then closing the door before you have the time to answer, right? I wouldn't be a very good communicator or a good friend or anything. So the point being is, like, social media is a tool to communicate between two parties. And I'm taking the time to respond to people and to answer people and to engage with people. I'm showing that I'm a good communicator. And if you just don't like people, you will never find success. If engaging or talking to people is not your forte, it's going to be a really challenging road for you. And I'm super sorry, but this is just one of those platforms that lends itself to visual, legible text like this and that, a story, whatnot. Certain aspects just don't perform well on there, right?
Chris, is there a place we can find that 40-minute talk, or is that,
No.
is that part of your teaching, your class?
There's a reason it's not online, because that's what I get paid to teach.
Okay, right. Oh, I just wanted to double check that. Okay, so that's part of your upcoming class too, I presume?
No, it's not. It's something I've taught in workshops, and I've taught for, like, sometimes brands will bring me in to help educate their marketing departments and whatnot. And, I just synthesize down the things that I've learned and try to take all those analytics and whittle it down to something, yeah.
Do you send out newsletters on your upcoming events?
I do. Yeah, I have newsletters. I mean, I used to do a lot of events, probably like 30, 40 a year, workshops, speaking, film screenings. But with COVID, that's obviously changed. I'll probably be doing workshops in my studio again, starting soon. But my international workshops, my nationwide workshops, are kind of on hold.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We have a question from Haley. Chris, do you have a photo rep? If not, how do you introduce yourself to clients?
Great question. I do have a photo rep, and that's the route that I go. But of course, to answer your question, this one's going to take a minute to explain. So maybe this is a good one to end on, because we're getting close to one. But here's something I want to say. And Hugh, Andrea, don't cringe while I say this. Just try to bite your tongue, because I know this is going to be painful. But I want to say a couple things, because this is a really good question. And I actually dive deeply into this in my business of photography workshop, because this is one of the most complicated things that young photographers need to learn. A traditional relationship with a rep is awesome. And the rep's job is really to take your book, your work, your portfolio, and introduce and take it and shop it around, right? Shop it around, meaning take it to ad agencies, take it to art buyers, et cetera, et cetera. Put it in front of people, right? Whether that's an editorial client, magazine, or a commercial client. That's excellent. Now, you can do that yourself. It's okay. There's no rule that says you can't. It might be uncomfortable because it's you showing somebody your book. And let me tell you this, you have to be a level 10 narcissist if you're able to go in and say, I'm Chris Burkard. I'm so awesome. Here's my book. Here's what I charge, yada, yada, yada. The reason you have a rep is so they can say those things for you, so they can build you up, so they can make you out to be this awesome person. I can't do that. I don't have that type of ego, and I'm not that proud of the work, right? So I work with somebody and I rely upon somebody to share that book, because really, if you go in and have a meeting with, Shayat or whoever, or Sachi or whatever, and you're like, here's my work, and they're looking for enthusiasm, they're looking for excitement, and you can't muster that, that's going to be a bad meeting, right? Now, you can go in there, you can go set up meetings with Patagonia and North Face and whatever. It might take you some time and it might take you some energy, but you can do it, right? How you do that, it's not that complicated. You can find email lists, you can research the internet, you can ask friends, not complicated. That has to be time you're willing to invest. Now, one thing I would say is that, and this is kind of outside of the question, but the question was about like, how do you introduce yourself to new clients?
Right.
First of all, research. If it's a Fortune 500, they're going through an agency, so there's no point to reach out to the client directly. Better to reach out to the agency that represents them, and then specifically the producer or the art buyer. If it's a small brand like a Cotopaxi or like a Rourke or sometimes the chances of you reaching out to them on Instagram are just as good as anything else, because the chances are the person who's running their Instagram is sitting in a cubicle next to their marketing director. So getting an email or getting a contact or just sending over a hello message, the beautiful thing about that is that they're one thumb click away from seeing your portfolio and seeing your work. It's a really easy way to navigate. Now, this is the part that's kind of cringeworthy. The most important aspect of having an agent is the theory of what an agent represents. It's not so much the agent themselves, and I'm going to break this down. It's the fact that they create a level of separation between you and the client. Now, does that level of separation need to be a different person? Does that level of separation need to be a certified, bona fide, school-taught agent? No, it could be somebody that you trust, that's in your studio, your office, your family, your friend group. It doesn't matter. The point being is that when I get an email, my goal with every call, with every email is to say, I'm excited, I'm happy, I'm looking forward to doing this job. Thanks for thinking about me, because I am. I'm genuinely happy. My agent, their job is to be the one who's saying, hey, let's back up here. This is the cost, this is the value, blah, blah, blah. Do you guys have money for this? Right? So a lot of times, you end up getting yourself into a familiar situation with a client where you're first talking about creative, then you're talking about the job, then 3 months later, you're trying to get paid, and that's not fun. And I'll tell you one thing, if you want to set your job off on the wrong foot, do this. Try to bid your own job and have them whittle you down to the bare minimum to where you're making like next to nothing, and then go on the job and try to smile and be happy. It's a lot easier to do that when you have a level of separation, right? That being said, that's the best role of an agent. If that person, that agent, on an email or on a call is a friend of yours that you're feeding information, or if it's even you on a different email chain, who's to know the difference, right? The point being is that every photographer will benefit from having a level of separation. Now, I'm getting away from the idea of a traditional agent's role, which is bidding your rates and knowing the industry. Nothing will replace that. But if you're starting out and you want to create a level of safety, a barrier where you can express yourself freely, I would advise you to take that advice and consider it seriously.
Amen. I'm not cringing.
Okay, good. I know it needs explanation, because I don't want to discredit your role and how important that is and how critical it is, because it really is critical. But the ability to have for people to create that separation barrier where you can be creative and stay creative,
Yeah.
and else can be
Right.
Yeah,
That's right.
I call it the good cop, bad cop.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was just going to say that.
I'm the bad cop.
right.
And
You're
that's
always the good cop.
right. And that's the strategy with my agent that we do. I'm the one that's on the forefront showing the enthusiasm. She's behind counting numbers, and it's going to be the hard ass when the reality sets, right?
And that's okay, because there's you want to go on the shoot and just be nothing but happy and joyous. Like, you don't want to be on a call hearing them tell you, oh, we only have this much money, and you're like, oh gosh. You guys, I'm so sorry, but I got to jump off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
would love to do it again, like in a month or so. Like let's do it. I'd be psyched.
Awesome.
Yes.
I would love that. Love
Yeah.
that.
Wait, I have so much to ask you. I didn't even get to all
I
my
know.
questions.
We're like a third of the way through. Question, buddy.
I have long-winded answers. I'm so sorry.
No,
No, it's
perfect.
great. It's really good.
Let's do it. Let's do
Such good
it.
information.
Let's do a 2-hour block next time, or come up to the studio and we could do it in my little space here.
Wow.
Oh, I love
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Hugh and I are going to stay on and chat, so stay with us. But Chris, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. All
Yeah.
right.
Cheers.
Looking forward to it.
Wow. That was
Holy-
so good.
Yeah. No, he has a lot to say. You can just tell the passion in his
Man,
answers, you know. He knows what he's doing.
he knows what he's doing from so many levels.
And I love that last point that he made, which I think is so important. It's like, how am I going to show up to a shoot, you know, after they whittle me down to this number
Yeah.
with enthusiasm? And most likely I'm going to subconsciously sabotage the job.
Right.
You know, he's so right about that.
Right. Because you're not an actor.
And saying no. You know, if you need to, say no, because I really feel like let's get that bar back up here, because it's a race to the bottom right now.
Yes.
It's a
I
race to
always
the bottom.
tell photographers if they're being asked, can you add some more shots? Can you do a variation? It's not really a full shot, it's a variation. You have to say, I would love to, but you'll have to talk to Andrea.
That's right. That's right.
You're always the good guy. I would love to. Sure, that's easy for me, but Andrea and I have this policy that I can't. You have to talk to her.
I love that. I love
Yeah,
that.
like you're gonna get in trouble if they don't talk to me.
And the other message that he gave was, you know, where do I start? And you know, he brought it down to the heart. You know, like, what are you passionate about? For him, it was surfing. You know,
Yeah.
it might be, and to take a different angle of that, you know, of that particular subject that's been, you know, photographed forever. Let's say surfing, right? And come up with something that's different. You know, a different perspective.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about his work. And he talked about the expansive landscape and the small silhouettes. You know, that just rings for me. It really, really does. So
He came at it with a mindset from a business person and a creative.
yeah,
He's really strong in both.
Really strong in both. Really
And
strong.
approaches everything from both, vantage points.
Well, that was the thing about Jeremy. I find a lot of similarities between Jeremy
Cohort.
and
Yeah.
him. You know,
Yeah.
one is, you know, that sensibility that they have. They're coming from both sides of the brain.
Yeah.
You know, they both have families.
Mhm.
You know, and they're doing other things besides just photography. You know,
Interesting.
you know, Chris's his line of backpacks and camera cases, his books. Jeremy's got his books, he's got his hotel, and that's just all aside from his photography. So diversification is
interesting.
super important, you know?
To keep the business mind.
Well, that's just to keep the coffers full so we can go out and do the personal projects,
Yeah.
you know? So, and then
Not
that
that every photographer can do that, but it's a good example of one option.
Well, it's something to strive for, you know?
Yeah.
It really is something to strive for, so.
I think there's so many points of this. I'm really blown away. I wanted to, but what about this? And what about that? And
Well, I'm blown away that he's wanting to come back.
I know.
That's awesome. So let's book him.
We
okay?
did our job.
Yeah, good. Well, I got to shoot out of here myself.
Okay.
So we'll see you in
Thanks,
about
everybody.
a month, I guess, right?
Yeah, we're going to take off August. So we're going to have a little vacation. See you sometime September.
Yeah, we'll keep you guys posted.
Yes.
Andrea, thanks again so much. Have a wonderful
Thank you.
vacation.
Mhm.
And thanks to Sammy's for sponsoring this. Love
right.
Sammy's. And join APA.
Because it's a great resource hub.
Yep.
And I don't work for them. I'm not making any money off this.
Now, we're here to advocate for you. We're here to inform you because this career can be very isolating. So we're here to help.
Be in a community.
All right.
Okay.
See you later.
See
Okay.
ya.
Bye, Andrea.
Bye.